have the rules of quantum
Bananas.
engagements, I guess. All of these are contained in B.
Yeah.
Now the question is, how could you, if whatever A is gives rise to B, maybe there's a chance that part of A is contained in B, but you cannot go saying that whatever is in B is also in A. Because all we know is that A gives rise to B.
Alright, so let's go a little bit with pin.
So,
There we go.
so
No, this is
so
yours.
For causality, it's a great.
You took my fucking
Causality is a great example
perfect
for
color.
B.
Favorite color, you fucking thief. No, okay. So
Purple is a great color.
So repeat that. So we got A. A implies B, and also A at the same time is included with B.
Maybe it's not necessarily that A will have the same rule set as B. It's just that whatever A is will create. Let me give an example in our
B is a subset of A, I
So-
guess, kind of.
Not even really. Like, this is a great example here, because I don't like using sword notation. I usually stick with my conceptual examples. So, this is a first for me. I won't be doing too great with these.
I guess you're
But
virgin when it comes to
it,
what do you call it?
suppose so.
Logic notations. You can learn them. They're not really hard.
I suppose that would be a correct. Yeah, I'll have to look into them sometime. But so when it comes to like the quantum rules that are mostly in agreement upon as far as science goes, there are plenty of things that don't appear to have any cause at all. Well, meanwhile, on our scales, causality reigns supreme, as if you could predict everything from just one moment. Now, there are plenty of theories, and most are working out pretty well, to my knowledge, as to how a lack of causality gives rise to causality. For example, like,
I mean,
such as like averaging out path.
isn't that called retrocausality?
And it's not like retrocausality would be like something from the present affecting the past, right? This is just things without any cause at all, making things having a cause. Because all of their actions average out to one path, essentially. This I might be able to draw a diagram of.
Because usually to be fair, because one is because I don't understand quantum mechanics. Second, because quantum mechanics is quite a not very well defined place, let's call it, because there's not one big agreed upon model yet. Because
Here's the very little that I understand here. So, if you have a point, let's say it's called A, no relation to the other A, everything, and B, and you want to find what path a particle is going to take in between them, it would take every single path. But the one that is most defined, one that actually plans out, is the average of all of them. For example, you see this arrow and this arrow? These two will cancel out. These will build upon each other.
I mean, I could,
in a sense.
I could just come here. I mean, that's, I guess, how brutal things can be. But I could just come here and tell you that it's not that you can just have it, that one path. You can have all the paths you want. They're all yours. I'll give it to you. It's fine. You have them. All right?
In a sense, yeah.
All right? The problem is, why A? So, so
that's the thing.
Not just why A and why the path. So, like, is A necessarily explainable by itself? By necessity?
Well, are we talking about the rule set A here, or the point A? Because this is just a point in space. Right?
Regardless,
Right here I'm talking about.
Is it point? Is it a rule set? I mean, you can. Is there a piano? Video? I'm sorry. So the thing we're like, the thing with my argument is, again, I don't use causality at all anymore. Like, even then I believe I told you that, but if I didn't, shit. Sorry about that. We can go back to causality then. But It's not that. It's the problem is so dependency. Is it that whatever we have right now between our hands, or something that we could call necessary, so it would be there regardless, the same way, it would not be able to be rearranged. It would just always exactly be A. So that might be a problem.
I think I'm.
Another problem. Go ahead.
Are you talking about determinism?
I'm not talking about determinism. I'm talking about anything ever.
I'm confused.
So any entity, any type of being, whether it's a law of physics or maybe an atom, or whether it's I don't know, a banana, a rock, a human being, a mind. Would that be what do you call it? Contingent or necessary? If it is contingent, even without causality, even if we want to give you the retro causality, even if we don't even want to worry about causality, if it's contingent, something either gave rise to it or it depends on something for it to exist, to be there.
I think I might be getting this.
So can it be explained solely by itself?
For the concept here, I suppose we're asking, can the universe explain its own existence? Is that what we're necessarily asking here?
Yeah, so by necessity.
Yes. So it just has. When you say necessity, maybe.
It's not that it just has to be. It would have never been any other way, in any way, shape, or form possible. So not even a conceivable possibility. That fantastic.
I would say that doesn't apply to our current knowledge of the world. Things can go other ways. Especially if early on the universe is ruled by quantum mechanics, and those will later determine everything else.
Yeah. I mean the quantum themselves mechanics can be different. Hello, Yona. Don't run. Come here and say hello. Don't be shy. Anyway, so, we're going back to our shit.
Jump back to what we were saying.
Shit talk. Yeah.
The universe can't explain itself, as far as we know. Now, the problem is, we cannot also try to explain the universe by using the rules that don't explain it. Such rules include basically anything our intuition gives us.
What do you mean?
He's saying it's impossible to find what created everything.
No, you still can use, what do you call it? Wouldn't that be called deductive logic? So even
Oh. Not if that logic doesn't exist. If the Big Bang was the start of all logic, all mathematics.
Yeah, but that's what your assumption is. But what is logic? We can define logic if you would like.
Well, logic. I would say logic would be. It depends. What do you define as logical? We can figure it out.
Alright, so to break it down as much as I could, basically all logic has to do is mostly with language. Your ability to communicate an idea intelligibly. So you will be talking about possibilities and impossibilities. Your sentence may be grammatically correct, like saying that, what do you call it? The sun is cold, for example, or the earth is flat, but it could be an impossibility. It could be a logical impossibility. A more better example is that saying two strictly contradictory statements for one thing at one time. Let's call it that. So you have like things that you may call
the
it.
green button is true.
No, not that. You
Like,
got
you
even
know, the good
worse.
old
So
one.
like you have multiple kinds of impossibilities or like contradictions, if you want to call it. You have the scientific ones, and then you have the philosophical ones. So you can tell me that scientifically, it's impossible that there's a pink elephant playing video games behind the moon, right?
I suppose so.
Right. But if you want to talk on purely logical basis, that's actually there's not necessarily any thing to prevent it from happening. You know, produce other reasons for it to happen. So when we talk about a contradiction here, we're talking about logical impossibilities. Logical impossibilities are not things, so like it's not something that can exist. Logical possibilities is a possible existence. Logic as itself is just a tool that we basically apply to everything to have some coherency of how we understand something.
Yes, but isn't all our logic based upon what we see around us?
No, logic is actually inherent. You inherently have it. You're not taught logic technically. You inherently have logic.
No, I don't mean taught. Not as in like in a third person sense.
Yeah.
But think about this. Your brain still teaches itself all the time. No one teaches you that if you see a splattered egg on the ground, that odds are it fell off a table that's right next to it. No one teaches you that, but you realize that yourself.
That's fine. I mean, but no one has, you basically also still giving the brain the fact that there is any logical explanation for anything ever. I mean, where would that come from? That's an epistemology question.
Or it comes to the patterns that we observe. We see something fall off a table, and then it might shatter. So if we see something in its shattered state from a table, then our brain stitches back the patterns.
No. But that's now we're inferring based on the patterns that we view the logic. But technically speaking, you can even argue scientifically speaking, there's no reason. Let's call it reason. There's no any sufficient reason for you to say that if the egg falls off the table it's gonna break, other than that you've seen it happen before, and now you're inferring the past on the future.
Yes.
Right? But that's not what is not what I'm questioning. What I'm questioning is that the that capability for us to connect things to begin with, that is not something that you're taught. It's something that you do by default.
Something your subconscious mind does.
Yeah, that's by default. But there's no. I mean, you're gonna have
the experience.
You're still taking it for granted. I'm not granting you that one. If we want to get that far, if you want to be that skeptical, I'm not granting you that one.
So yeah, you don't have to be taught like. Okay, so is the logical reasoning your inference? Or am I missing something here? Because I don't think I'm quite.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm going off that the argument is logical, is basically a logical inference. So, for example, even if it wasn't there to begin with, or even if something else gave rise to it, whatever you want to call it, or even if it depends on something, even like the fact that it's there, it depends on something. Like it exists, there is existence, there has to be some necessary existence for the contingent existence.
Why?
All right, can
why does there have to be a necessary existence?
All right, because a contingent existence cannot explain itself. A necessary existence would be self-explanatory, as it would be only one way and one way alone.
It cannot explain itself in our current rule set, though. With every rule we see, right?
What do you mean? The current rule set would be so like imagine the current imagine the current settings that we have. that necessary existence would be, let's call it, outside of it. It would not have any effect on it to begin with. It is irrelevant
But yet, in
what
order
the
to
inside
have it-
rule sets for us are.
Are we not inferring the necessary existence based on the rules we see around us?
No, we're inferring that
Like
based on
anything
logic.
like
Not
So
based
now
on
there
any
are
physical. Not. I'm not arguing
difference.
any physical possibilities. These are not what I'm talking about. I don't care about physical possibilities or impossibilities, or scientific ones, or
So here's
whatever you
where we're
want to call
disagreeing.
them.
I'm saying that logic itself is within this universe. It is a rule that exists within this universe.
And how would you go about proving logic physically?
Well, once again, let's tell me something that is illogical, because we still need to refine this idea of logic. That's what we're still working on.
We need to refine
We're
our idea of
disagreeing.
logic. Well, do you know the fundamental laws of logic? I guess they kind of.
Hit me with it right now.
Okay, so you got the law of non-contradiction, which is A cannot be what do you call? No, that's identity. So you know, I don't know,
is
A
B, B
cannot
cannot
be
cause
slow
A,
and
then A
fast
is
at the
called
same
cause.
time. You know, it's you can't have these two contradictory statements to be true at once. The law of identity, A is just A and nothing else. So you can't say A is A and also A is B. Hello?
I mean, conceptually, don't we already have that in some sense?
What do you mean?
Superposition, if you know anything about it. Waves and particles are the
Again,
exact same.
this is only
Is B and B is
don't
A?
don't get me wrong, but that's why I don't go into quantum mechanics, because they are still very much incomplete. Like it's still very much like within its infancy. It's really
Perhaps
hard
so,
to
but
just
there were
use
still
that.
domains of certain certainty.
Hmm?
But also, we do have to ask where this, like, we claim A cannot be B and B cannot be A, correct?
No,
Is that-
A is only A itself. So A would only be referring
Yeah.
to itself. So I cannot say Rook and me and Nirko, like the guy behind you. You're not both of you guys. You're just one. You're just Rook.
Alright, so then, but where does this idea come from? That A has...
Hello.
Hello there.
You cut off. Oh,
Sorry to just pop in.
hello.
Yeah, but where does the logical reasoning that A must be A come from? Someone wrote it down, someone made the inference. Even if we all hold that inference ourselves, someone put it down on paper and tried to extrapolate more from it.
Alright. I have a bottle in my hand. What else is this bottle? I actually do have it.
That's
I'm not saying... Now, here's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that it's wrong that we're taking the logic from our experience of this world. We're not born with the logic itself. Our brain shapes it. Alright?
Not again. I would disagree, but I cannot pull out the study right now. That tested that,
Because, like...
but basically that
If you
was
find
that
it,
has
send
been
it to me.
performed on infants. So like, it's a prior knowledge if you want to call it that. But if we're going to, I mean, we can. I don't mind questioning where that knowledge came from, but if you wanna take the path that you want to take, I'm not even granting you that knowledge. So you're gonna have to decide: do you want to use logic or do you want to discard logic?
I don't think we have to do either just yet. We just have to find out where it comes from, which is it's so difficult But yeah, it's like, even if it is inherent within our minds, like let's say a fear, like a fear is inherent within our minds. You don't need to be taught to fear anything, and you don't even really have to see anything to fear anything. Your brain can
You
do
can be
plenty of
taught fear
things.
actually, but yeah.
Uh, oh yeah, you can. You just don't have to.
Watch enough Vsauce
That's
episodes
the
and
point.
uh, but well,
Why
so
is
can
it
I?
inherent in the brain make it any more valuable or any more trusted than something we learn?
Well, that's as far as we can get. All right. Because once we get there, we're gonna have to throw logic, and when we throw logic away, um, basically we throw anything that has any kind of explanatory power away. Uh,
Perhaps what we have to do?
so, so everything, literally everything would be true at the same time, including possible and impossible, what you would call existences or truths or whatever you want to call them. Well, they're all true now, but so I mean, why not? I would, in
Well, I mean,
fact, 1 + 1 would in fact equal 5 and 3 and every other number on the real number category at the same time. Um, I mean, we can get quite adventurous with this.
I don't actually think that's quite like once again like bringing it back. I'm trying to keep us from going into circles as much as I can. I'm
Yeah.
sure you'd like to do the same. I think that we actually had that mistake last time around where we did start to go in circles a little bit. So we really
A
got
little
to
bit,
pin down
yeah.
where we're disagreeing.
That's fine. Um, we can move on, I guess, to the third law, um, which is a premise or a something would hold the value of true or false ultimately, which means it either is true or false. There's nothing in between. Um, +1 + 1 is either equals 2. It's either true or false. You can put your distances in between how we get to true or false, but ultimately that value is that one value.
Now, you're making this too easy to keep bringing up quantum mechanics.
And I'm
Schrodinger's
telling you, it's not a valid field to use since it's in the infancy and it has a lot of models that are not all consistent with each other.
Not all of them are consistent, but we can't. I believe we still do use some.
That's fine. We may know some of those mechanics, but that doesn't mean that we totally understand them and we can just wave them into an argument when we cannot clearly define them.
Okay,
The laws of logic
this
have
is
been
fair,
defined, I mean.
but it's also not correct to assume that these will have to obey the laws of logic. At least I don't think it is.
Okay, so some applications of the laws of logic. What would that be?
Because we're still disagreeing. And I think our main disagreement is, are the laws of logic from the intuitive from our experience in the world? And even if
No,
not,
I'm not
from
attributing
our
it to
logic, I suppose we
experience.
could say that.
The only thing that I
I'm
would
saying that's what
attribute
I'm
to
saying.
experience is what do you call it? Causality. We're giving causality. We're actually assuming causality, but we cannot 100% prove it, if you will. We can say that, oh, it's because it happened before, therefore it's going to happen later on, which is basically the philosophy of science. I'm not sure if I said that before.
Symmetry.
Not symmetry, it's the belief that the
I don't think you
future
have.
will repeat the past.
Yeah, it's symmetry. The laws of nature are symmetric through past and future.
I'm pretty sure symmetry would not be the best term here. The best term is regular. It is regular and
Okay,
stable.
I think there are scientific uses for symmetry in this case, but it is a great question as to, and there are some laws that don't actually even obey that. There are some phenomenon that, if you were to, most laws of physics, if you run time backwards, work the same, but not all of them.
Yeah, because usually we have variables that are not in mind.
Not like that. I mean, like, there's quantum mechanics. Like, once again, I know you don't like me bringing this up.
Well,
Yeah,
it's fine.
we
I'll
don't-
beat a dead horse as much as you need me to. I'm cool with that.
There's particles without a proper opposite spin, and if you wanted to make a mirror universe where everything was the opposite, everything should work the same except for these.
What do you mean
I
by
mean,
mirror
that
opposite
isn't quite a symmetrical
spin?
law. Like, what is the particle? It might.
Oh,
I think
you
it's
mean like an
neutrinos.
electron, like in an orbit around a nucleus?
Yeah, if it spins one way, and you could put the opposite spin, and if you change everything as well to the opposite, then it would work as well.
What if you don't change the spin?
Well, it's working as it is now, and it's not changing spin for the most part. My hand is still here. I don't know what I'm saying anymore.
Yeah, I noticed. Oh, sorry, that was mean.
Yeah, I think I misunderstood what you're saying.
What is it? So, you have a problem with assuming or working with the laws of logic?
The thing is, I don't think we're going to be able to agree on anything until we can agree on what the laws of logic are. That's the problem. Because
Well,
that's the
I can
fundamental
send.
difference
I
in
can literally
understanding.
send you the Wikipedia link, or I think there's few sites that I can send you. They all will list the same three my fundamental laws.
Yes, but we need to find out where these come from. Why do we call these ones laws? Like,
Oh,
let's
where
say-
do they come? There, that's a different argument. That's an epistemology issue.
yeah, how do we know?
That is
this
like
is-
okay, the mind and prior knowledge, things that you know by default. It's not again, it's not something you taught. One of the examples is that you don't teach an infant how to suck from the breast like milk. That is a process. He has to know it, otherwise he'll fucking die. But there is no way you can teach him
Yes,
that.
inherent knowledge.
And I would advise not to bring evolution in the mix, because that's gonna make things more complicated than it needs be. But the fact that is that the prior knowledge is there.
Hey, the person who just joined, perhaps they can help us a little bit. Too early.
What was the thing that we disagreed on again? You have a problem. Is that
the origin of the laws of logic? I suppose the rules of logic.
yeah, that's fine.
because-
But are you saying that you do not use them? So
Oh no, I'm not saying I don't use them.
would the
I'm
origin
saying
of
they're not absolute.
would the origin of what do you call it?
If you were to say the laws of logic are absolute at this time, then that would most likely be wrong, as people thought the laws of logic were absolute back in Roman times, and, well, we've found a lot of what they said to be false.
There's
Some of it
difference
was true,
between
but not
laws
all.
of logic and specific scientific claims. Laws of logic are pretty
Yes,
much the
but-
same.
Not entirely
For
true.
most.
Can something be true and false at the same time?
Because some people will think that it's
It can be
logical
neither.
not to kill people, others will think it's logical to kill people.
That's not a logical claim, it's a moral claim.
That's like
Not true.
it's not like a
It
law.
can be
Like the
logical.
laws we are talking about.
Yeah,
Like
well,
three
It
rules.
can be a moral. It can be a moral thing, but it also could be just a logical thing. Like, okay, this is gonna be logical to kill this one man, and get a bunch of benefits. That's a logical thing to do. Yet some people will think those benefits aren't worth the killing of one man.
So
That
you're
is
saying
that is
it's
still
logical that we killed Hitler.
I think we should just kill everyone.
no.
That sounds better.
That still
Okay.
technically, ultimately, is a moral claim because how do you find something being worth it?
You find that by what they can do, what it's worth.
No. What do you define that some? How do you define something worth being, and how do you define something not worth doing?
But we're missing the disagreement here.
Eventually, it will go into like the whole moral thing, because then you're gonna have to go into what is right or wrong.
Alright, everyone here, as though besides Rose, I guess, because that person's smoking. Cringe. Do you think morality is objective or subjective?
Not today. No, I'm not. I'm gonna have to go through like 5 discussions to get there.
I think it
But I
depends on the
think it
person.
is objective.
I don't know.
That's
I feel like it can
subjective.
sometimes be subjective.
Objectively subjective is my take.
I don't think it's always subjective, but
Objectively subjective.
Good. You need a base for it. You need to have some source of what you're defining as good or evil, right or wrong. And as a materialistic person, I don't see that anywhere. So, Jeffrey Dahmer is just as morally righteous as me or Gandhi.
Okay, there we go.
And from us being
I got timed out.
having a disagreement about whether. So we disagree.
Well, I guess maybe the clearest terms I can use is that are the laws of logic true?
I'm clean there, and this is actually super ironic.
I need you to
I'm-
take a position because otherwise we're not actually having an argument.
That's the it's there's a spectrum of it. Like fuck, you're not gonna like me making this comparison, but it's like Newton's theory of gravity. It is not quite wrong, but it's not true either. It's true within a degree of error, and within certain like his equations are true as long as you're not reaching high enough velocities or high enough gravities.
Is anything ever true?
But if what we mean by true is some fundamental, we all have to take a necessary.
As in me
that
saying
anything
the
exists in
snow
the
is
first
white.
place.
When I say the snow is white,
Well,
is that sentence itself true?
no.
I would say yes, because you're projecting a vision of what
Alright.
you see in your eyes as white onto that snow. And you're also
Forget
assuming
forget
that
my
you're looking at
existence.
isn't
We're
stuff.
isolating the ice or the snow. We're isolating that one property thing with its one property that we're discussing, which is its color, which it's either white or is it not?
It is indeed giving off the wavelength that you correspond to white.
I really need a
That is
yes or
measurable.
no answer. Okay, I'm not asking about. Hold up. I'm not asking about the current stuff around it, how it's affecting it. I'm asking about it in a vacuum by itself. That one small piece of fact, is that fact truthful or falsy? Does it
It is still giving
bear
off the
that?
wavelength of
Does
white light, yes.
I'm gonna take it as
Like,
yes.
It is, yes, it is true.
All right.
Assuming all that is going on in your mind.
So,
yes.
assuming that the vacuum, but it's that snow is never coming out of the vacuum. Assuming that snow is never coming out of that vacuum, would that still be true ultimately?
Yeah, I suppose.
Can it be
Why
both
wouldn't it?
true and not true at the same time?
In this case, no. With this specific question.
All right. So ultimately,
Snow
whatever
can
the
be
state
not
that we're
white.
talking about, even if we take in all
True,
the
but this specific
collection
spec.
of things, we're taking all of these in mind. We don't like we have taken account of all of the specificities, the specifics, all the small details, because ultimately your complex system is just as strong as its fundamental basic parts. Eventually, it will have to stand at either truthfulness or falsehood.
Well, what do we mean when we say truth? All that we really mean is
Uh.
that all our senses are agreeing upon one thing in a repeated motion. We agree that snow
This
is
is why
white
I
if you
dislike
point at a speck of
arguments
snow.
like this.
I'm
That's
just saying,
fine.
like, there's
I
too
don't
much
understand why
nuance
people go
into
into
what something is
arguments
true.
like this.
It's fun.
No.
Okay?
Like,
I'm
it
having
furthers
fun.
nothing.
I can't.
It doesn't have to be. That's not the point of the discussion to begin with. So, what do we mean by true? Oh god, I don't have a definition for truth in my hand right now. Let's call it that. That sentence would be describing the situation of that specific thing that we're talking about. So, like, let's say when I say this line is red, whatever statement I'm saying is describing properties about the line. So it matches what we're discussing. It matches what we're discussing. If the line is not red,
Correct.
then that is false, which means it doesn't match the thing that we're talking about.
Correct.
Okay, I guess I really am struggling to make a definition for truth, for truth or falsehood.
Excuse me, officers. Do you have an idea of how to define truth?
Ooh, that's a good
honesty.
question. Why don't you?
The most important question
I think to
for all
define
of
truth,
you.
it has to be within a very specified view.
The thing is, I didn't want to go into
I
it.
feel like there's no variables for it, you know? It's a simple thing, you know? If you know it, you know it, basically, you know?
You can call it a property of something, but at the same time, the truthfulness of the proposition, let's call it, does not rely on the proposition itself. It relies on the. You can say it relies on the mind that produced that proposition. But what I wanted to ask is, do you guys like chicken?
Am I running out of battery? That might be a problem.
Oh no.
Going back to the speck of snow, I was taken into differences like, do we see the same color and all things like that.
No, I'm gonna take all these variables
Because
away
those
from
are
you,
important to
and
know.
I'm
Like,
talking
when you
as.
say, is the snow white? We also need to specify. When we say.
All right, I
an object
crashed
is a
again. I
certain
mean,
color,
not crashed.
it really means that it has the capacity to reflect a certain wavelength of light. That's what we're really saying.
Exactly. So it's
That's the most
chemical
objective way to put it.
composition that. But the problem with using snow and ice is snow and ice isn't really always white. It's clear. It's see-through. It just bends the light. It doesn't reflect. It doesn't absorb. It's not the greatest.
There we go.
Using something
Let me-
that's more.
I'll try to make
standard
it
and pure wood.
simple for all of us, because I think you guys are drifting into complexities that are not necessary to the discussion. Again, what is the simplest true fact that you ever know about?
I think, therefore I am.
All right.
How about that?
Is that true? Is that sentence true? Would you give it would you give it the property,
Yes, I would say.
the value of truthfulness? All right. Ultimately speaking, is it true and false at the same time, Or is it either true or false?
No, it is not. It is indeed true or false.
Alright. Can it have both of them at once?
Specific instance, no.
Can it have neither of them?
Not to the specific instance, no.
If it could ever have a third value, what would that third value be?
Given what we've seen in reality, I'd say we can't say whether it's both or neither, but perhaps one of them or something else.
Okay. What is that something else?
Oh no. It's beyond our intuition.
No, I'll tell you what it is,
Yeah.
because I'm starting to get annoyed at it. It's undefined value because it's unintelligible value. Now, if you want to go beyond, if you want to say, no, it has to be something else, there has to be something else, then you have to define...
Oh no, don't tell me you're losing your bearings.
No. But you have... I'm probably going to have to stop talking, though, soon. But you're going to have your... Am I disconnecting? Shit. Okay, there we go, again. Chicken. Do you like chicken?
Where did Brooke go?
I don't know, he was here when I disconnected.
Oh, hi.
Ooh, what is that? That doesn't look like a chicken.
That is not great.
Nah, look at it. Anyway,
You there? Have I seen you before? No, I have not.
so, what I was saying again. Yeah, hello, do you like chicken?
Me personally, I'm a vegetarian, but I'm sure it's good.
Okay,
Why,
get
there's
the
so many
flamethrower.
vegetarians?
Get the flamethrower. Sorry about
Delayed
that.
I'd pick a death penalty for that.
Sorry, I can't trust people who don't like chicken.
Personally, chicken is overrated.
I'm gonna kill you.
That's what I've heard.
It is.
Okay, so I think I'm probably not gonna be able to talk for now, but I will just say
The
this.
Five Guys Crusader.
If you want to say that you have that one undefined value, you have the problem that it's either it's gonna be unintelligible within the current within the logic that we use. So now you're gonna have to come up with your own logic. All right, so it has to also be consistent. It has to have like actual functions, if you want to call it that, reliable. And you're gonna have to be able to define all the possible values. And you're gonna have to define the impossible values. Unless you're saying that there is no impossible values, which means that everything is possible, which means every statement that we ever say or don't say is also true and false at the same time, which means every belief or every every random law of physics that come out is true and false at the same time. 1 + 1 again can equal to 3, 5, and all the numbers in the real numbers family. As an example.
Alright, so let me. Part of what I think you're missing is that my point is not that the logic is wrong. My point is that it's not absolute throughout all of existence itself.
Why
So
not?
Once again, we go into what is the root of these rules. How do we establish these? Where
Again,
where does our
the
ability
root-
senses come from?
The root of the rules here does not matter as long as they do actually possess the explanatory power that they have. Again, you're still gonna run into quite a bit of problems to actually come up with rules and somehow successfully using them generally. So you're gonna have to somehow prove them. Keep in mind, like everything we're talking about right now is not within the realm of physics as well. So we were actually talking within the realm of metaphysics. These are all, technically speaking, and I will give you that, they are all technically speaking assumptions. Alright? But that's what we predicate, that's what we, that's what we base everything else we do on, including your scientific methods, including quite a bit of, quantum mechanics anyway. We're going to have a model that is understandable, and just because now we cannot necessarily explain it very well, it doesn't mean it's going to be the same way all the time. If you're going to say that the logic that I'm using right now is also going to be false potentially, then also bringing in quantum mechanics is not going to do you any favors either. You're gridlocking yourself within a place where you basically can say that everything ultimately can, in fact, have true or falsehood values at the same time. So,
not everything, just some things.
Why?
Well, let's see. Logic itself is a very useful tool to try to help us understand our universe itself. But the universe is under no obligation to be understandable to us. Miracle that's this understandable.
We're not talking about the universe. We're talking about concepts. We're talking about we're talking about actual possibilities and impossibilities. So if it's physical or not, it actually does not matter. What we're discussing, again, it's more of a function of language than anything else. It's about the coherency. Is it intelligible? Is whatever you say intelligible or not?
Should it have to be intelligible?
Do you want to communicate ideas? Do you want to discuss truth? Is truth intelligible?
I would like to discuss truth, but truth may not always be understandable.
Understandable does not mean it's not intelligible or possible. Something that you cannot understand does not therefore mean that it's possibly a contradiction. That's like one of the claims that I ran across when I was arguing with one Christian guy about the law of identity, if you want to call it. And it was like,
one more time.
Our ability to understand it is, Our ability to understand a complex system does not necessarily matter that much as long as the complex system is in fact intelligible. So, can we communicate that idea and would it be intelligible?
How can you communicate an idea that cannot be understood?
Yeah, exactly.
Analogies of it.
So.
And why should it be understandable in the first place?
And what do you mean by understandable? Well, no. Before I even let you do that.
Comprehensible.
Yeah. So what I'm talking about is that we were discussing that does it ultimately have a specific value? Forget what I need you to try to do, which is a problem that I notice a lot of nerds get into. Forget about your complexity. Your complexity sucks ass because it's still built up upon the simplicity that we're discussing right now. It doesn't matter how complex, your ideas are still as strong as their foundations. Do you understand what I mean? So your grand complex explanation is going to ultimately fall apart if your simple mechanics of explaining are fundamentally flawed or undefined.
I'm not exactly trying to explain anything here.
Yeah, so that's one of the problems when I was talking about the snow is white thing, is that you still will trying to go into the complexities of it, and I'm trying to talk about a crude fact, if you want to call it. Me bringing the snow is what, and doesn't matter if it's even snow, doesn't matter if there's light reflections. We're talking about a property, but you keep end up
But
like
a property that is measured by our mind and our eyes.
that was what this way. So because we're saying that through our minds and eyes, does it not ultimately have a true value or false value?
I'd say it does have a true or false value, which need to properly
So-
define what the value we are talking
Which
about
means
is.
at least
And the conclusion we came to,
which means that at least 3 of the 3 laws of logic are actually true. Because if you look into the 3 fundamental laws of logic, it's saying the same thing 3 times.
actually,
A value cannot
I'm saying-
have
yes, I do think
2
that the 3 laws
values
of
or
logic
an
are true.
undefined value at the same time. A thing cannot possess an undefined value or 2 values that are contradictory at the same time.
indeed.
Alright, so are we agreeing on the laws of
And
logic?
this works for grass and all that. We're agreeing for them. Like, for example, it's not that I think they're wrong, once again. It's that I think they aren't absolute. They apply on our macro scales. They are incredibly helpful. I don't deny that in the slightest. Point is that we cannot expect them to explain everything.
Again,
Not everything
Why
will
not?
make sense.
okay, why should anything make sense? If
That
you're
is a
going to
great
put a
question.
limit, listen, I'm gonna put you on another spot. This is really hard one. Where's the limit? You're gonna have to specifically define it exactly for us, so that everyone from now on uses the Rook standard of win logic and win no logic. I know I'm being retarded and I sound like pretentious or like some idiot, but it is a really important issue to actually point out. Is that okay? If you want to discuss it in one issue, who's to say is that why don't we discuss it in this other issue and that other issue, and why not any issue at all?
Because I would say the explanatory power applies there in other issues. For example, explanatory power works in so many fields, but there are plenty of areas where I don't think it will.
Like,
Even if, and okay, wait, actually, let me answer your earlier question. Why we were able to understand anything. Evolutionarily, it is quite beneficial to understand your environment. We evolved to understand the basics of the world around us. To understand how to throw a spear, to understand how to run, to understand what berries look like. You know what I'm trying to say. Our senses evolved.
yeah, it's
And
you're broadening this discussion way more than it should be. But
right.
even if, so what?
Hmm?
So what?
So what?
Ultimately, there's no specific. There's no specific limit to where we should apply it and not apply it. And if things doesn't necessarily always have to be intelligible, so what? Just throw the logic away.
No, I'm saying the logic's a powerful tool.
No,
It's
but
not everywhere.
are you sure?
And see, once again, our disagreement is still
Why-
stemming from
so-
where those rules come from. How much can we trust
again,
them?
the mechanism of where something come from does not have to do anything about its value.
It does
Huh.
actually. Like, think of it. If you hear something coming from a 5-year-old's mouth randomly, that's not going to be holding much value.
If
don't put
if
lot
you
of
get a
stock in
child through rape, is he less valuable than a child through legitimate, consensual
That's-
sexual intercourse?
That's not information about our world. That's
No,
That's
but that is still applying the same idea that you used. If it, what's to
Instead of taking
say?
the bare bones.
what do you want my example to be as complex as the universe? Because why use examples to begin with?
All right, so let's just dive into that example for a second. So what is the root of my example with the child saying something? It is when we're hearing information about anything, we must question the source to see whether that information is true. For example, literally, it's not even just people. The good old "do we see the same color" is a fine example of this. Where do we get the information for what a color looks like? Most likely our brain. Our eyes play a huge part too, but our brain is the final factor. And so
That's fine. Does that mean even if there is colorblind people that the color red doesn't exist? If everyone on Earth
define as a color.
If everyone on Earth, all right, I'm telling you, you still keep going into the complexity. If everyone on Earth could not see the color red, does not mean that the color red does not exist. If we cannot see a wavelength X, does that mean that the wavelength X doesn't exist?
The point here is that the color red still exists. It's just when we think of red, are we describing a wavelength, or are we describing the visual perception?
We're describing a
of
property.
A reddish color.
Again, it doesn't matter how complex you dive in. But we're describing one thing that we all, let's say, pointing out, calling red.
Yeah, so
all right, regardless of our understanding.
All for certain agree on that.
Hello, how's it going?
It's going.
Hola.
What y'all up to in
Actually,
here?
I'm gonna have to stop talking.
Discussing how applicable logic is for the last hour and a half, bro.
I just joined to make some coffee.
So, let's bring this all the way back home. So this all stems
so I'm just
from.
Gonna listen.
This all stems from the oh no, your brother is sleeping. What a shame. What was I gonna say? Just to bring this back around, this all stems from the main question. If the universe is created by something, even using the term something, I don't find adequate here. How can we... Assuming that... Now, granted, there isn't a necessary assumption here that all the patterns we observe today, logic included, were created at the Big Bang. I mean, even the theories that go so far as back still have some rules, such as quantum rules around, even without any matter of space-time. Although I suppose there should be still... It's fucking weird, that's all there is to say. But... the point is, if the rules we see today were created from some other rule set, we cannot apply the current rules to that rule set because it would be entirely different. It also assumes a rule set at all, and the idea of a rule set comes from our mind looking at the patterns in our own universe. Slice it any way you like, everything you see, every thought you have, is all confined to the universe.
So, what if the rule set came from outside? Let's call it that.
Wait, what if what?
What if the rule set came from outside?
That's it could be, but think about it.
From another parallel universe.
Well, then again, if we want to go into parallel universes, what created the parallel universes? We're only looking for a bigger picture.
Listen, again, you're just introducing complexity. Ultimately, the rules are either true or false. Alright?
But the idea of something being true or false is an inference that we make upon our modern world.
Okay. Which means ultimately truthfulness or falsehood is an inference that is coming from a mind that ultimately goes back to a mind.
Indeed.
And if truth...
The idea of something
hold up. If truth would have to be referring back to the mind that made the assumption. And if truth is absolute, then you would have truth
So, I mean,
being referring
in this
ultimately
world, the
to
coffee came
singular,
down
what do you call it?
Oh wait.
Uniquely defined
we can-
mind.
Oh,
You can say that.
this is the first time I've ever joined this world, so I don't.
Well,
The truth is
I don't know
then
what's in this.
dependent
Truth
on a
is-
mind. No, truth is dependent on a mind in that case. And then you're actually creating a necessary mind, or a necessary being with the attribute mind.
Well, what I'm claiming here is not that truth doesn't exist. It's not that truth is truth doesn't exist without a mind. It's that the idea of something being true or false, like it has to be this way, comes from our universe, from our inferences about the universe. Those inferences can be true.
You can't
Even
even
without a
prove if
human,
it
it
comes
seems
from
real.
our universe to begin with. Again, these are all metaphysical assumptions. Hey,
Perhaps.
no, not perhaps. Any ever assertion or any what do you call it, proposition you ever make is technically a metaphysical thing. It's just you made that language and structured it in one way, and then you assumed that it's either true or false. But that doesn't necessarily project anything on the physical world, nor reflect it.
I think I partially agree.
Yeah, but if we're gonna
It doesn't
say,
project anything onto the
Yeah.
world, but it can reflect it, I'd say.
okay, which means we're talking within the metaphysical. Bringing the universe does not help you. Do you understand what I'm telling you?
I am.
Even if the universe never
We're gonna be
existed,
doing this for
even if the universe never existed, these propositions would still be able to exist and have truth or falsehood values.
What makes you say that?
Okay, the universe didn't exist. Is that true?
I see what you're saying here. It's mind bending, and that's the point. I say.
No, that's not the point. That's where you actually mess up. Because why should it be true or false even if the universe in fact did not exist?
I think I see what you're saying here.
Well, yeah, I have to
So
stop
what you're
talking
sort of
because
saying is that
he needs to sleep. Piece of shit.